Are you, Una?
Hello and good evening. I am speaking to you from London this evening, and I am very pleased to have with me today, with me in Google Hangout land, Mr. Henry Hyde, who is an indie author, and Juliet McKenna, who is part of the VAT Action Group. And we are here, of course, to talk about this very important subject of VAT. Good evening, Henry and Juliet.
Hi there, Orna. Nice to be with you.
Good evening.
So there'll be lots of flicking about tonight between these two people who really are an absolute font of information on this very important topic. And a number of authors are under the misapprehension that this only affects you if you live in the UK, or this only affects you if you live in Europe. But in actual fact, this is an issue that is relevant for anybody who is selling digital products online, and it's therefore really, really relevant to indie authors. So I'm going to start, Henry, by asking you, Henry has done up an absolutely wonderful document for Alliance members all about this issue, and we'll be telling you later on how you can get your hands on that. But if you could just bring us through, Henry, what happened? What, where did this come from for us as authors?
Yeah, well, good evening everyone out there for a start. This came as a complete shock to thousands of us, not just indie authors, but micro businesses, or as they're now even being called, nano businesses, one-person businesses selling online digital products. And I think it was probably end of November, beginning of December last year that I first heard of this. I think that's kind of right, isn't it, Juliet? That sort of time. And it came absolutely as a bolt from the blue, because what it turned out was this piece of legislation had actually been being talked about since about 2007, 2008, and it had been decided, I think is the only way we can put it, it had been decided without telling us that as of the 1st of January 2015, the way that VAT was going to be charged on digital products was going to change utterly beyond all recognition. And it probably had one of the most radical effects on those of us in the UK, because we have quite a generous VAT threshold. And normally what would happen is, if you're a UK business of any kind, you would be permitted to make sales up to a value of £81,000 per annum, a turnover of £81,000 per annum, before you'd actually need to register for VAT. So as a small business, and I've run a number of small businesses in my time, I'm a graphic designer by profession, in fact, I've run a number of small businesses that have happily sort of bobbled away underneath this £81,000 threshold, or whatever it's been at the time, without having to register for VAT. I've also run businesses that have had turnover of much greater than £81,000, and therefore have got used to the fact that, well, if you're doing well, of course, yes, you're going to have to register for VAT. But what happened on the 1st of January was that a piece of legislation came into effect, basically affecting, and I'm checking the actual terminology here, telecommunications, broadcasting, and electronic services, which meant that VAT would have to be charged not on the basis of where the business is providing the product, but on where the purchaser is. So this meant that if you're selling an ebook now, if your customer happens to be in Germany, then you would have to charge them VAT not at the rate pertaining in the UK, but at the rate pertaining on ebooks in Germany. Or
if I could just come in there, Henry, to say that this applies not just in the UK, because of course we have lots of members listening in who are not located in the UK.
Oh, absolutely.
I just want to make that point really, really clear, because I know there is confusion on this. So
I'm sort of coming to that. Yeah, because at first, obviously those of us in the UK who are used to not being VAT registered at all because we have quite a generous threshold, that came as the first shock to us. And then, yes, the realization sank in that, oh my God, this means that everyone in the European Union is going to have to start charging VAT at the rate that applies in the country where that digital product is sold. Now, this just complicates things exponentially. So we looked into this a bit further, and the rules seem to be stipulating that, okay, if you sell an ebook, say I sold one of my back issue magazines that I was selling from one of my blogs. If I sold one of my back issue magazines, total cost £2, I think is the average price I charge for one of them, to someone in, let's have a think, I don't know, Lithuania, I would have to potentially register with the VAT authorities in Lithuania, or Poland, or Germany, or France. Well, this, I think a lot of people immediately started, panicking, frankly. Then it became apparent that, well, actually, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs had set up a system called VATMOS in order to try and simplify this. How nice of them. And the idea would be then that you would register for this VATMOS scheme here in the UK, and then the UK HMRC would then pass on any VAT owing to another European Union country via them. So you would actually, rather than having to run around and register for VAT in 28 different EU countries, you could at least register for VAT just here in the UK. However, you would still have to keep a record of every sale made to someone in one of the other EU countries and account for that VAT. So instead of, normally just as in a UK business, even if you were properly VAT registered, you would just make one accounting in pound sterling to HMRC. You would now have to start keeping records of how many sales have been made and for what amounts to all these other European Union countries. Now, it just so happens that back issues of my magazine happen to sell quite well within the EU, and I know I've got customers from, I think at the last count, certainly more than 30 different countries, and probably most of the EU countries. So I was thinking, oh my God, this is ridiculous. So let's say I made a sale of one magazine to someone in Germany. Their VAT rate in Germany is, and I'm just running down my little thing here, Germany for ebooks, it's 19%. Oh, and I've sold 7 to Italian customers. Oh, hang on, the VAT rate for Italy is 22%, and so on. Sweden, 25%, Slovakia, 20%. In this document that I've produced for ALLi, there is a list of all the 28 member states and the various different rates of VAT that apply for ebooks in those countries. So already we were thinking, oh my God, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. I deliberately have been running a micro business to keep my turnover below the UK VAT threshold, and suddenly, whether I like it or not, the instant I sell one of my ebooks to someone in a different EU country, I have to, within, I think it's 10 days or something, I have to sign up for VATMOS and start accounting for VAT in these other European countries. And to me, I mean, one of the reasons I got involved with, making a big noise about this was, well, hang on a minute, that's just grossly unfair. If I was a big business with a large turnover, selling to lots of different countries and making lots of money, well, okay, that goes with the territory. By that point, I would probably be able to afford, a full-time accountant or bookkeeper and other members of staff who could look after this stuff for me. But that's not why I set up my business the way I set it up. So that's bad enough. Then we were told, oh yes, also you have to be able to prove where this transaction took place, and you need to produce at least 2 corroborated pieces of evidence proving that that customer was in, let's say, Malta when he made the purchase of your ebook, or Ireland or France or wherever it happens to be. Now, that's really, really stupid, frankly, because most of us are using systems like PayPal. And PayPal, quite simply, does not provide that kind of information. Also, within the European Union and within individual countries, in recent years, there's been huge amounts of efforts invested in trying to improve online security and privacy so that little micro shops like mine can't find out, in fact, where you are when you're making your purchase. The whole reason for having a system like PayPal is so that you don't have to re-enter your name, address, and credit card information every time you make an online purchase. So this just, when we realized the extent of the chaos that this was going to create, well, I mean, this left us all utterly aghast. I mean, I think there were lots of us that thought, no, hang on a minute, I've fallen asleep, I'm in the middle of some sort of Kafkaesque dream where I'm guilty until proven innocent, but they're not even going to tell me what I'm guilty of until I've actually broken the law.
I've briefed several journalists about this now, and you sit across the table and watch them giving it, hang on, I must be getting something wrong here. I must have misunderstood. Yeah. Surely this can't be what's happening.
Absolutely, and of course it quickly became known here in the UK as VAT mess as opposed to VAT muss. If I could bring you in here, Juliet, you too, of course, are an author, and given the sort of time frame, that was also something that was absolutely ludicrous because, as you say, most people didn't even hear about it until it was already a fait accompli. So your campaign just sprang into action. Can you just tell us, kind of pick up from where Henry is kind of flailing about, wondering what on earth am I going to do? This is going to decimate my business. Where did you guys come in?
Well, a lot of this is thanks to the marvels of social media, because various of us started blogging about this. There's myself on the book side, a woman called Rosie Slosek, who is an accountant who specialises in startup businesses, particularly for the housebound, for the the disabled, people with caring responsibilities, to basically help people get off benefits. A woman called Claire Yosa, who has a very impressive background in big business, but is now an at-home mum, but wanting to run a business that she can fit around her children. Izzy Zinneberg, very successful interior designer, who had a baby on, I think it was Sunday, and she wanted to set up a digital business that she could run from home, again, while she was at home with her children. I'm at the other end of the child rearing game. My two are 19 and 21, about to leave home. So I'm looking, given the state of the book trade at the moment, to very much expanding my digital business, getting my backlist. I've got 9 books that I've argued with lawyers in London and New York to get the rights back, and I want to issue those independently as ebooks. So we all became aware of each other through social media and got together and started coordinating our efforts. And really, with the sorts of coincidences you couldn't put in a novel because people would think it was unbelievable, we variously were invited to a meeting with the Secretary to the Treasury, head of international VAT for HMRC, and various other grandees on 4th of December. And so we met for the first time, the half dozen of us that could make that meeting, at Embankment Tube Station at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then went into this meeting with government ministers. And since then, it's become more and more apparent that so many of the presumptions and assumptions underpinning this whole approach were based on getting big business. The whole idea behind this is to stop the likes of Amazon and Google and Apple locating their business in Luxembourg, population, what, 350,000, and doing billions of turnover in business at a VAT rate of 3%, and the rest of the EU exchequer seeing none of that money. Personally, I'm all in favour of that. The predatory pricing that Amazon have used to wreck the book trade has been financed by gaming the VAT system. However, they had absolutely no clue about the smallest business sector. They didn't know we existed, still less how we actually work. And they are now becoming very, very well aware of that. But the problem is, we are still lumbered with this system. So what the EU VAT Action Group have been doing ever since is gathering hard data, because we keep getting these woolly-minded assurances that, oh, well, it's not so bad because. And the best way of answering that is saying, well, here is a survey of 4,000 people, which shows actually, yes, it is. It is as bad as that. In fact, it's worse. So we have now convinced them that we know what we're talking about, to the extent of being represented on HMRC and Treasury working groups dealing with this. Several of us were in London last week before, dealing with that. And again, in one of those coincidences that you couldn't put in a novel, I happen to live in David Cameron's constituency. So I have exercised my democratic right to have a constituency surgery appointment, and have had a one-to-one meeting with David Cameron about this.
Fantastic.
Well, you play the cards you dealt. You play the cards you dealt. And that was a very interesting meeting, because clearly he had briefing materials from HMRC and Treasury. He also had the letters that I've been sending his constituency office. That was interesting. First time I rang up, the very, very professional constituency secretary, very nice lady, was very carefully finding out exactly what it was I was ringing up about, on the basis that, if I had a bee in my bonnet about the bins, that's not really MP business. So I explained it was about new EU VAT regulations on digital cross-border sales, at which point there was this audible change of gear. Anyway, so the Prime Minister had obviously had the material that we as the campaign have produced, the Treasury and HMRC material, and he had spotted the various points where what the two sides are saying don't quite tie up.
Okay, if I can come back to that in a little while, because I'm very interested in sort of looking at what you think is going to happen as we go forward. I'd like to just come back and bring Henry in again for a few minutes, just to go through. You produced this wonderful document, which is really succinct. It's a perfect. We have. A lot of our members will know, but for those who don't, we have an ongoing campaign called Ask ALLi, under which we promise that ALLi can answer any self-publishing question that you might have, and we're producing a number of documents and guides to various scenarios, and Henry has kindly, under the Ask ALLi umbrella, done a fantastic document, and the core of what we try to do there is give you the basic minimum information that you need, but all the information that you need, and I think that this document does that very well. So Henry, and please, if those of you who are listening have any questions, please do use the Q&A facility to send your questions in, because we're very happy to answer them here live this evening as well. But Henry, if you could just talk about the kinds of questions that people are coming to you with, and what are the typical FAQs, if you like, and just briefly run through, and we will of course put the link to the document in the notes of the people on it. But if you could just give us a run through.
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be honest, the most frequent question I get asked is, "Oh, surely this doesn't apply to me."
Yeah.
The number of times that you can, until you're blue in the face, you can tell people, no, this applies to all digital sales, all cross-border digital sales, and then they'll say, yeah, but I'm only, it's just me, I'm not VAT registered, and then I have to tell them, well, I'm sorry, there are some options which we can talk about in a second, but you know, the way it looked for quite some time was, well, whether you like it or not, if you sell a digital product of any kind, so an ebook, or it could be online courses. I mean, you know, well-known ALLi members like Joanna Penn, for example, who run online courses, you know, she, you know, was pretty startled when she realized, oh my goodness me, this means that, you know, it's suddenly it's a more troublesome thing, a more problematic thing to be producing online courses for people to automatically download. Then, you know, the next question I tend to get is, well, how can I get around this, you know, without wishing to imply that people are interested in tax evasion? Of course not, but tax avoidance, which is perfectly legal. Well, again, for certainly initially, it looked pretty grim, because the only option that seemed to apply was, well, okay, you can turn back the clock on your website to about 1996, where, you know, if someone wanted to buy something from you online, what you did was you produced your PDF file or whatever, and you attached it as an email to that customer. And the crux of this is part of the wording of the legislation, which involves this phrase, human intervention. And of course that's open to interpretation, but after a flurry of people sent correspondence to HMRC and got various replies back, it turned out that what this sort of meant was, well, anything that's completely automated is covered by this legislation. So if you do, as I had been doing, you have a little online shop and people click a PayPal Buy It Now button, and that ties in with your eShop software, and then, you know, they go and pay via PayPal, and within about 30 seconds to 60 seconds, the product is delivered to their email inbox automatically. Well, essentially, this legislation completely puts a stop to that. And so the only workaround seemed to be, well, okay, you can still have a PayPal button on your website. That generates an email to you saying, oh, there's a customer waiting to purchase this product. Then you would have to create an individually worded email to that customer and attach the product. I mean, this is crazy. Part of this, Orna, has come about because, as I think I mentioned earlier on, they started dreaming up this legislation in about 2007. In fact, there's a chap on the EU VAT ACTION Facebook group who's done a bit of research, a chap called Adam Dubay. I'm not sure how to pronounce his surname. Sorry, Adam, if you're here. But he actually did a comparison list of what the internet was like back in 2006, 2007 compared to the way it is today. And there's just some extraordinary statistics. The EU e-commerce market, for example, was 66% smaller than it is today. The idea of Web 2 didn't exist. Blogging, well, I remember way back in the day, I was actually one of the first bloggers about my hobby of wargaming. There was virtually nobody else out there doing it. It's exploded in recent years. Ebooks, who had ebooks? There was no Kindle. There was no Kindle shop. Imagine that. And particularly as writers, the way that Amazon and Kindle completely dominates our life nowadays, and when they were dreaming up this legislation, there was no Kindle. So, you know, that just gives some indication.
Well,
so
as they put it together, the underlying assumption has been, oh, well, ebooks aren't a problem. Everyone buys them from Amazon.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
Yeah, and I think one of the bitter ironies of this has been, as Juliet mentioned earlier, that the legislation was designed to catch the big giants, the Googles and the Amazons, who were hiding in, you know, tax havens effectively like Luxembourg and paying virtually nil VAT. And instead, what's happened is I mean, at the latest estimate, it was something in excess of perhaps 250,000 micro businesses have been caught as collateral damage. Yeah. When they drew up this legislation, there was just, they couldn't understand that people could set up a business on their kitchen table and instantly be selling internationally. In fact, just yesterday or the day before, there was something I saw where there was a document came out from the EU talking about, oh yes, we must encourage digital entrepreneurship and help these businesses to grow to the point where they can sell overseas. Completely, whoosh over their heads. I, on day one of selling my magazine online, I was selling internationally, and that's the way it is, in my experience, for all micro digital traders. Sorry, Julia, you wanted to say something.
You made the exact same point, and they keep trying to help. Like, the latest thing has been pointing us to various bits of legislation, because one of the first bits of legislation was that you cannot, if you are within the EU, you cannot exclude other EU countries, because that falls foul of discrimination legislation. Okay, and then they have found some other legislation, which they're now pointing us to, saying, well, if the administrative burden is unduly burdensome, then that is an excuse for not selling cross borders. So, well, okay, that's fine if, say, only 95% of your sales are domestic. You might grit your teeth and give up your 5% of cross border sales. 80%, the small press who've been publishing my ebooks to this point, 80% of their ebook sales are cross-border sales. They're direct sales from their website. Yes, you all sell through the major platforms like Amazon and Google and the rest, but having the option for direct sales is still very, very important. Not least, you sign up for Amazon, you sign up for their terms and conditions, non-negotiable, they can vary them at any time. That having the sanction to say, you know what, I'm going to walk away and do this independently, is one of the few ways we have of keeping the likes of Amazon and Google and Apple honest. Or
actually, I have to come in there to say that last year, and in the last 18 months, but particularly in the last 6 months of last year, we were seeing more and more and more authors wake up to the fact that there was life beyond Amazon, and of course Amazon still being a very core part of their business, but more and more people were actually beginning to develop online shops and to think about different ways of shaping their content in order to produce different kinds of products from the same, and we were encouraging them to do all of this, and then whammy, this came in on top of it.
Direct sales are very important for a whole load of reasons other than just the money, in terms of marketing strategies and developing contact with your readership. It's you lose that direct contact if you can only go through third parties.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And the financial aspect is not to be sniffed at, because obviously, as you guys well know, I mean, Amazon would, as an author, they take something between 40 and 70%, depending on the deal you've got with them, in fees. Whereas I was quite happily bibbling along, paying 3% or something to PayPal whenever I sold a copy of my magazine. Now that's per item. I mean, if you think, okay, well, it's a matter of pence difference, but you start adding that up, and that makes a colossal difference. And I immediately, one of the first things I felt about this legislation was, this is crazy. You're driving people not only into the arms of the companies you're trying to catch and get to pay more tax, but essentially you're robbing them of a huge chunk of their livelihood. And I looked around at the options that were available pre-January the 1st, and essentially, it was going to completely decimate my income. Now, as it happens, thank goodness, literally just in the nick of time, I stumbled across literally someone who'd mentioned, oh, there's this company called PayHip who are only going to take 5%, and they're going to handle the VAT issues for you. Well, that was like, the 7th Cavalry coming over the hill, to be honest, as far as I was concerned, and for a lot of other people as well. And I've just noticed today or yesterday, I think Etsy, which is something that's quite popular amongst people who do knitting patterns, that kind of stuff, has just decided to sort of mimic what PayHip have done. But my heart was absolutely in my mouth, and I think quite apart from anything else, Orna, even though PayHip for me is probably going to be the solution I'm going to use. It means I've had to slam on the brakes, completely change my business plan for the coming year. And it's the time and effort, because I've now got to take all that information that was running perfectly happily on my website, transfer it all across to PayHip, and there are still complications because there's this issue of, well, and it runs up against another piece of legislation which says if you're going to sell something to someone online, you must show them what the price is that they're going to pay.
It's a legal requirement in the EU to have a VAT inclusive price at first point of sale.
Absolutely. And so one of the big problems, Orna, was that no one was equipped to do this. How? Well, you know, I don't know if this person coming to me is from Poland or from Ireland or from France or from Germany. You know, all I could do would be to say, well, okay, you want to buy one of my magazines, it's £2 plus the applicable rate of VAT in the country where you are at the time you make the purchase. And there's been some funny things about that as well, you know, taking the example of the person who goes on holiday, they've got their mobile phone with them, and they buy an ebook whilst they're, you know, crossing the border from France into Spain. What rate of VAT should they pay? You know, this has become a bit of a...
It's not just people on holiday. My husband works for the UK division of a Dutch firm who also have operations in Romania. It's entirely possible to have an Englishman from that office spending 6 months in Romania with a Dutch mobile phone, which makes proving where the applicable VAT rate applies nigh on impossible.
Okay, so let's just take it. It's crazy. I mean, I think everybody is agreed on that, and you've given us a fantastic insight to some of the particular lunacies around this. And we'll talk to Juliet in a moment about, you know, obviously ALLi completely supports the action group and all the work that they're doing. They're doing amazing work, and we would encourage all our members to get involved and get on board, because this has to change. It quite simply can't be left the way it is. We have to kind of make noises, and I do believe one of the reasons that it is being actually listened to is because there are so many writers and good communicators like Juliet and Henry out there pushing hard for change. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But as things stand, I want to kind of make it really kind of crystal clear to everybody, Henry, as things stand at the moment, and I know that some of you haven't done this, so Henry's going to tell you what you have to do to meet your legal obligations.
Okay, well, if you want to continue selling your work, digital work, from your own website, there are only two options. The first option is that really you need to register for VAT MOS via the HMRC. If you're going to make any sales cross-border from the UK or any other European Union country where you are into another European Union country, you need to register for VAT MOS, and you need to, and there's no easy answer to this, you need to go hunting for a payment system that will register where the customer is arriving from and how much VAT is due. There are now more, for example, WordPress plugins that are coming online. There's been a lot of, one bunch of people who are going to make a lot of money from this are software engineers. That's for sure. Someone always makes money from a situation like this, and there's been a huge number of software guys beavering away frantically over the last few weeks, coming up with new plugins for WordPress and that kind of stuff, new shopping cart systems. I mean, there's systems like Zencart is one that a lot of people have heard of because it's a freeware system. But there are, of course, other commercial options available. We need to make that clear, and other freeware ones as well, like OpenCart. But they are more difficult as solutions. I mean, there's no two ways about it. It's a very steep learning curve, and the bottom line is you're going to have to read the help section really carefully and get, if they have online forums, as these bits of software often do, get heavily involved with the online discussion for your relevant shopping cart system. The other option is to do what I'm doing, which is to say, well, okay, for the sake of 5% fee, I am going to sign up with PayHip, which I've done. And again, there's no quick answer. It's a laborious workaround because you've then got to transfer all that you had on your own website onto PayHip system and upload it. Once you have, now having had experience of it for a couple of weeks, I can say it's very slick, it's very user-friendly. The way they get around this thing about the pricing is that you tell them whether you want the price displayed on your website to be inclusive or exclusive of VAT. So if you want to make sure that everyone gets charged the same price for your product, then you might say that, well, okay, I'm going to make it $1.99. What then happens is PayHip charge the customer that $1.99, but then deduct the VAT on your behalf. So obviously, if you get a customer who from a country where the rate of VAT is 27%, you're going to end up with less in your pocket as an author than if they're from the UK, where from somewhere else like Germany, where the VAT rate is say 19%. But that's you pay your money and it takes your choice. The option I've gone for is to say, well, no, I want my £2. Thank you very much indeed. What they then do is on your website it's displayed as £2, but then as soon as they click the button where they want to buy the thing, they're taken straight away to PayPal, and on arrival at that first PayPal page, they are presented with the price plus VAT. Or including the VAT appropriate to their country. It can't be done sooner than that because obviously it uses sort of a cookie system that when you arrive at that website, it sends out a bit of software that basically interrogates your browser to find out where you are. And it's only at that point that it can say, aha, you're in Ireland or Germany or France or wherever you are, and then come back with that information and generate the VAT amount. But that's kind of the closest we can get at the moment. There is no sort of instantaneous way of doing it other than literally laboriously on your own website writing out 28 different prices. That's how crazy it is.
And
so
about compliance, if you use PayHip, in terms of, okay, they'll do obviously the calculations for you and so on, but you still have quite a job at the end of the year, do you? Or do you still
No.
Do they do all of that for you? Can you just explain a little bit more about that?
Absolutely, because yes, I mean, unlike if you were having your own shopping cart system, where essentially you would at the end of the every quarter, in fact, have to render a VAT return to HMRC regarding VATMOS. The great advantage of using someone like PayHip is that they deal with all the VAT for you. Essentially, what you do is you sign a license for them to resell your product, and then they become the people who are liable for the VAT. So you as an author or as a micro business, you don't have to worry about signing up for VAT until or unless your turnover actually reaches that £81,000 threshold, as it currently is in the UK. The threshold thing, I'm sure, is something that Juliet's going to talk about in a minute, because that's something that we've been fighting to get a threshold reintroduced. One of the problems that we have is the UK threshold has been rather generous compared to other EU countries, and in fact in some EU countries like Italy, I know because my sister lives there, the VAT threshold is 0. So the instant you earn a single euro from your transactions, you are liable to render VAT to the authorities. But yes, I mean, that's also what you've got to do is essentially, Orna, you've got to make a decision about, am I happy to, do all this accounting on my own behalf on a quarterly basis? I think for the vast majority of micro businesses and particularly authors, it's like, oh my God, I didn't become an author to have to do VAT returns, for God's sake. And so this is why PayHip, with a very low fee of 5%, they've pitched it pretty cleverly, to be honest, because the other options out there, Amazon obviously is the big elephant in the room. I think compared to 40 to 70%, I'm happy paying 5% of PayHip. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
All right, Orna.
All righty then. So Juliet, we don't have a huge amount of time left, but I'm really interested in where you think this is going. Can you kind of give us a summary? First of all, what we want, and then how close you think we are to getting it.
Right, well, we in the UK have managed to convince the UK authorities that yes, this is a big problem. And the simplest way to solve the problem is to introduce a threshold. Now, at this point, the devil is in the detail. Where can that threshold be realistically pitched? And is it to be a turnover threshold or a cross-border sales threshold? And they're saying, well, if we make it just on your cross-border sales, maybe, and we're saying, yeah, but if we've got to account for cross-border sales, we've still got to find out where the customers are in the first place, which is the whole thing that we can't do. So, we are making headway in the UK. One of the big sticking points is this is an EU Commission thing. Change is going to have to come through and with the agreement of the rest of the EU Commission. Most of the other EU countries are going, what problem? We're not hearing anything about a problem. And that's because, that's because their micro businesses have no clue this has happened. HMRC, it has to be said, have dropped the ball spectacularly on communicating this. Compared to other European countries, they've done a stellar job. The amount of misinformation and misunderstanding about the whole system in just about every other European country is horrendous. Again, we are starting to make headway. Associated with the EU VAT Action group on Facebook, there is now a German-speaking group, there's now a French-speaking group. We have managed to stir up various people in the Netherlands, all of which countries are going to be extremely badly affected by this. So, things that we need are people in the UK to continue badgering their MPs and their MEPs. You do that and you will get a form letter basically saying, there, calm down dear, it's not really that bad. To which you need to reply with, actually, yes it is, and here are some hard facts, which wakes them up. We desperately need people in other European countries to start making a fuss to their finance ministries, their tax authorities, and just to keep on keeping on until the rest of the EU countries realise what a problem this is. If you're outside the EU, you currently have an opportunity to get your voice heard with the OECD, the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, because they are currently doing a consultation on this whole principle of taxation at customer location rather than supplier location, because there are a lot of tax authorities all around the world, particularly in the US, who are looking at all this and thinking, they can make it work, maybe we could try that. Now, one of the main consequences of all this happening is that US sellers of just about every digital product you can imagine are quite simply closing their doors to EU customers, up to and including Google. You can't actually now buy or sell your expertise through Google Helpouts for money. Wow. So what we need for the US people to do, and indeed Australia, New Zealand, any other OECD country, is to write a written submission to this consultation, which runs until the 20th of February. There is all the information you need. I've researched, I've got friends in Brussels, so I've researched exactly how you go about submitting to these consultations. It's a 2 to 3 page letter. It's not actually that difficult. It's not that scary. We've provided full guidance on the website. So basically, we're having various online pushes. we are preparing another Twitter campaign. One of the issues with Twitter campaigns is actually identifying Twitter accounts with the EU Commission that are actually read. An awful lot of them are outward facing. They send tweets out, nobody ever looks at what comes back in. So we're in the process of researching all that. What we need is noise, lots of it, with detail, and as much detail and as much noise as possible.
Fantastic.
I think we are in with a chance of getting a threshold that's workable, but also we still need a workable system for anyone going above that threshold. Hello? You still there, Una?
I don't know what happened there. We had a little blub. I think it's telling us it's time to wrap up, which unfortunately it is. We're coming to close. We will append the link to both Henry's article and of the this presentation in YouTube and on Google+. But can you just tell people where they can go to make this noise, please?
Well, Henry is very helpfully holding up a sign he prepared earlier.
You need to make noise for us to see it, and we need to.
If I do some talking, then if the camera switches to me at all, it doesn't seem to want to switch to me for some reason. There we are. It doesn't. The camera doesn't like me. I'm holding up a sign, folks, saying http://EU VAT ACTION all one word.org. Okay, folks, but that will be linked to, I'm sure, by Orna.
It will be linked to, and I know if you just Google VAT Action Group, it comes up because I did that some time ago. And yeah, a final word from you both, please, if I could. You first, Juliet.
We don't have to accept this. Yeah, democracy is about people making their voices heard. We are determined to make our voices heard until this is sorted out.
Fantastic, thank you. And Henry?
Yeah, I think it's important that people understand that they can make a difference, that we've already made a difference. I mean, Juliet and the gang running the EU VAT Action Group have, it's extraordinary, you know, they've been having meetings at the very highest level. So you can make a difference. You know, I ended up on BBC Radio 5 Live just because I'm a gobby bloke, and I sent out a whole load of tweets in the course of a single day. I think I must have done about 100 tweets in a day, and that gets you noticed, and as soon as you've got the attention of the media, that's half the battle, actually, just keeping the story in the news, and we need to make sure that's where it stays.
Today's news is I've spent today organising an appointment with the policy unit at number 10 Downing Street. That's where I'll be going next week.
Fantastic.
Absolutely wonderful, especially as 4 months ago, you know, you were just quietly sitting there writing your books, both of you.
Oh, yes.
You're both fantastic, and carry on being gobby indies and putting the pressure on. And if there's any way ALLi can support you, just let us know. And I predict that you'll have an influx of ALLi members coming into the Action Group over the next few days, and they are definitely, some of them, very, very gobby indeed, so lots of them coming up. So thank you both so much for giving up your evening to come and talk to us and tell us more about this. And as I said, folks, links will be available here and obviously in our closed member groups and so on. And yes, enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks to you both. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Orna.